Hi, my name is Tiago Peixoto. I'm from the World Bank, working with citizen participation and technology, and also I do research on that issue on my spare time.
Great. So what compelled you to accept the invitation to this event?
I think there are two things. One thing is, of course, that it comes from Beth, who's one of the major players in the field. The other thing is that you meet lots of people that normally you need to talk to, but you don't get to talk to because you're just caught up in your daily work. So it's actually a moment to settle down and actually manage to talk to people who you wanted to talk in the first place.
So over the course of the last 2 days, obviously the breadth of topics has been fairly wide. But what kinds of solutions or sort of critical issues have you been addressing these 2 days?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things is that we had was about citizen engagement and how to leverage citizen engagement and so on. And one of the things that we managed to do is an idea that we at the bank have been trying to put forward for a while, so it was very rewarding, which is what we call more or less kind of like the notion of cross-selling citizen engagement. So just to give you an example, normally governments can come to you and say, oh, can you make me a platform for people to come, a crowdsource? And then they put it up and nobody comes. Then they shut down and they're frustrated. At the same time, these governments, they're receiving 1 million phone calls from concerned citizens to complain about things and so on. So when you call a bank, normally they'll eventually give you the service you need, but before that they try to sell a new insurance and so on and so on. Now governments normally, when citizens come to them, they do the transaction and they hang up the phone. So one of the things that we talked about it here was how to use, for instance, when people call 311 services here in the United States, why not use that opportunity to cross-sell and maybe say, hey, do you know that you're registered to vote? Or hey, do you know that next week there's a community meeting that you go? And you can even tailor that. So if you call about recycling, it means it's a subject that probably interests you, and you can connect with local groups who maybe have similar concerns. So that's something we came up with concretely.
Right. And from that session, obviously you sort of coalesced around that one idea using sort of lessons learned from a tool previously and how that can be strengthened through this data process. Were there particular insights out of that session that stuck out and that sort of remain with you today?
No, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. These are pretty like stock and standard questions. And this afternoon we took part in the Hora, the circling through the very sort of bullet pointed sessions, but with very particular questions and asks. What was the most interesting to you there?
My first feeling is that we're in a dilemma between a research network and an advocate network. You see, and we're researching things that we make a living out of it, So we're somehow committed to reach good questions. So I think that's a dilemma that needs to be addressed. The second thing is how people talk differently about our field. So almost the feeling that I have is that what brings us together is somehow kind of like some belief that technology can improve either transparency, government efficiency, or citizen participation and democracy in general, but that's too loose to start building knowledge. And you can see that because people, when you start these conversations were excellent to get to the bottom of questions, but then you see that people are talking many times different things. So maybe I think I wonder how much of a group would be after actually if we went to the bottom of questions.
Right. It's funny, some of the conversations I've had over the last couple of days have sort of tackled that same thing. Do we define this group as a discipline? Is this a field necessarily? And some people are adamant that yes, it is. Sort of, there's a methodology, perhaps not yet fleshed out, within this space that says these are our first principles and this is where we go from here. Others have said this group is the space between fields. The idea that data is sort of out there and it informs any number of disciplines, and it's a matter of harnessing that. And perhaps this is more of a process network, the idea that we create a means towards improvement in all of these fields simply by harnessing data that is out there. I don't know which camp or if you fall into either.
I'm very much in a camp that says that this is not new, you know. I think saying that there's a novelty fallacy, which is, I think it exists for two reasons. No, so one is in the technology sector, innovation comes associated with improvement. So 2.0 is better than 1.0, of 2.0, no? But also, innovation creates new marketplace, you know? I don't know if you've seen, it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to become an expert at something. If the field is new, just take a few tweets, and all of a sudden you're the new open government guru. So I think there's also kind of like an interest in saying that it's new, it's easier to sell, and so on. But if you look, for instance, taking out technology, if we're talking about transparency and participation, technology helps it a lot, but the fundamentals go unchanged. You know, so I'm very much in the field that actually saying that it's a new field, it's harmful because we start to reinvent the wheel, and we do not build on knowledge that existed precedently.
But if you were to pick one thing over the next 5 years that can improve this question of governance, and in your situation, you were in session 4, where you tackled this idea head on of citizen engagement, sort of building trust, perhaps, in government again. You know, what's that one thing that needs to change?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go on the building trust question. Just give an example. I just want to make a statement about that because I think people talk about that a lot. You know, in some cases, what you need is mistrusting citizens. I mean, maybe in the United States, you might want to trust and so on. But there are places where if people don't trust, they're in serious trouble. If people don't mistrust their government. So just wanted to make that point. What would I look at? I'd look at under which conditions do citizen participation promotes better decisions than what we know as the status quo. So let's, under which condition are citizens smarter than a city council? You know, I would be looking at that because we advocate lots for transparency, for citizen involvement, but there are some cases that citizens can perform just as bad or even worse than representatives. So what I would be trying to look at really is like, under which conditions and what are the mechanisms that we leverage the knowledge that is dispersed? Because actually this is the ultimate goal, is to leverage a knowledge that is in everybody's head towards coming into more optimal decisions. This is, of course, from an instrumental perspective. The other perspective is more normative, in which would be just like, well, let people kind of take care of their destiny themselves. But this is a normative assumption. The other one that I would be interested in is like, under which assumptions are we smarter as citizens?
And so you've just you finished 2 days of the experiment, the GovLab experiment 1.0. And, you know, not to play off something that, you know, perhaps you're sensitive to, but version 2.0, if we are updating this, the experiment 2.0, how would you, knowing that this is sort of the convening power of the GovLab, if you had all these people in a room again, how would you do it? How would you sort of organize this event?
No, I would really focus like on day one. It's because actually this network has more practitioners than researchers. So what practitioners do good is action. So I think day one was extremely concrete because that was the expertise that was there, was really come out with something, you know. But next time, what I would do is like, now this time you guys have to really come with a prototype. Even though that was the message, I would even make it tighter and kind of somehow tighter. But I think this was what differentiated this from other conferences or anything already. And I've been to many, and I think that was the positive thing. Day 2, which was more about research, and since you don't have many researchers, you saw the conversation kind of like got a bit more dispersed. It's sometimes it's in a kind of like journalistic understanding of what research is. No offense to journalists, but there wasn't. It became less actionable, because to make actionable you need to build on people's expertise, and the majority of people who are on this network are not researchers. So maybe it's opening government doers network as opposed to an opening government research network.